You set to go? Okay. It is 5 o'clock, and we're calling the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Garola,
Present.
Councilmember Peñalosa, Councilmember Stowe,
Here, thank you.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Present.
Mayor Flores.
Present. We will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the city council on any matter scheduled for closed session. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. And do we have any oral communication, anything that was sent in? See that there is none, we will go into city council closed session.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are 3 items before the council in closed session this evening. The first pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 1, Council Legal Counsel, existing litigation, Vargas v. City of Porterville, Tulare County Superior Court, case number 282443. Item 2, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 3, Council Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 3 cases in which facts are not yet known to potential plaintiff. And number 3, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 4, Council Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 2 cases. Staff's report.
Thank you. It is 5:01. We will now go into closed session. We will reconvene open session and report on reportable action taken in closed session.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation or a moment of silence. Salute, pledge. Is there anyone that would like to come forth and do the invocation? If not, moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. We will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not. Please address all items not scheduled for public hearing at this time. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. If you are here for the public hearing, please hold your comment until such time. Is there anyone that would like to come forth?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I appreciate your faithful service to our community. I hope that you will do the right thing about the information.
May I have your name, please?
Yes, Joshua Coburn.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that you will do the right thing about the information that I'm going to give you. I'm the Trump impeachment whistleblower, and I need your help in alerting our members of Congress that a grand jury needs to be formed to investigate political actions as well as military actions here domestically in order to manipulate the outcome of elections. And that's only the beginning. The information that I have that I'm explaining to you right now has taken me approximately 35 years in forced government military service against my will as a total and complete violation of my rights in order to bring this information to you today. This has to be investigated, and I honestly believe that what I'm speaking to you about right now is one of the causes of the 9/11 attacks and all subsequent actions after the 9/11 attacks to limit and destroy our rights. They're dismantling our country right before our very eyes, and most people do not know what is going on. I have been poisoned, I've been attacked, I've been harassed for approximately 7 years because I refused to participate in this corruption. When I refused to participate in this corruption, they began a sterilization process on me, which is ongoing, and they are preventing me from getting medical attention, getting an attorney. They're violating my rights in every possible way. They're trying to coerce my cooperation with this illegal operation. What I'm asking the council to do is to contact our state representatives in Congress and ask them to bring this into Congress and a grand jury be formed so that we can get to the bottom of all of this madness. There have been deaths involved in this. For approximately 35 years, there have been deaths involved with this. But only within the last 7 years have the deaths, at least with my own personal knowledge, escalated. I believe that the Vincent Steen case, the police shooting of Vincent Steen, is involved with some of this activity, and also some deaths in my own family. What it seems to me that is happening is military intelligence organizations are conducting psychological operations in order to,
I'm going to ask you to summarize because the 3 minutes have already lapsed, but please summarize.
okay. Military organizations are controlling, manipulating, and coercing police officers in order for them to coerce, manipulate, and control street gangs in order to conduct secret military operations against U.S. citizens. This is a war against U.S. citizens. Please bring this before members of Congress and ask them to form a grand jury. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forth?
I'm a little shorter. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Samuel Diaz, and I'm here with the Tulare County Economic Development Corporation. And I wanted to just come by and, one, publicly introduce myself. I've had the honor of meeting most of you over the years personally, but never formally. And so I wanted to introduce myself, but then also inform the council of a grant that we recently received at the EDC from Southern California Gas Company. And the grant is for us to be able to purchase meals from local restaurants for senior care facilities in Tulare County. And I'm happy to announce that today, actually, about 2 hours ago, we were able to pilot that program here in Porterville. We were able to purchase meals from Randy's Italian Restaurant and deliver them to several facilities here in Porterville. And we're excited about continuing that as more care facilities sign up and we identify the need in Porterville and Tulare County abroad, signing up restaurants and facilities. And I also just wanted to, on a personal note, say that I'm excited about the work we're doing at the EDC. It's an honor to work with and see active board members like Councilmember Peñalosa and Councilmember Garola now as well, and some of the new additions that we're bringing on from the Porterville area, such as Rob Taylor and Kevin McPhail. And it's great to just be a part of the economic growth in our county, but specifically in what's happening here in Porterville. Being a Porterville native myself, it's always great to see what's going on here and be a part of that work. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself and share briefly a little bit of what we're doing, and I look forward to updating you all in the future.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, how much was that Mr. Marquez said was spent here in Porterville for the meals?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How much was spent?
Oh, right now we started with a very small group of meals. It was 19 meals from Randy's. So the gas company guidelines are $15 per meal. I believe it was $2.85 was the total. And we actually today alone had 3 additional restaurants sign up from Porterville, and we're working on the care facilities right now as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's so good to be here in person again. Mr. Lawless, I've got a document here for. What this is the voter registration statistics from Tulare County from the first weekend in January and last weekend. And you'll notice that the numbers are shifting greatly in the county. We're getting back to what we were at 1996, hopefully, before all the freeze and everything caused our economics to shift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments that have come in electronically?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, and none have been sent email. Okay. Then we will move on to the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have, the purpose of this evening's special meeting is to conduct a public hearing on consider adoption of the interim 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. I appreciate the City Council's time. I'd hoped that this public hearing would have occurred at your last meeting, but to ensure proper compliance with the proper noticing time that we scheduled for this evening. I'd be the first to say that these are extraordinary times and continue to be change daily. And certainly, I hear frequently the term to be used right now is flexible. Being flexible and being able to pivot in a quick fashion. And so, as the council's aware, and as I presented to the council earlier this month, your budget, as it was progressing through this year, was doing very well. And certainly with the events of COVID-19 have set every jurisdiction has been affected by this. We are as well. And there is a very rough conservative estimate that's been placed before you for the current fiscal year that ends today through June 30 that would reflect that the city could finish in a $775,000 deficit for the current fiscal year. Subsequent to that, and as indicated in the staff report, there had been indications that there would be CARES Act funding allocated as part of the state budget that the league was tracking. And as the staff reports indicates that it was going to be something in the magnitude of up to 700,000. Ranged between 600 and 700,000. There is an estimate that's been provided by Mr. Michael Coleman, who is one of the foremost municipal financial advisors in the state of California, who, according to his records, is showing that our allocation will be $740,000. And it's based on the $500 million that was appropriated in the governor's budget. The city of Porterville, we believe, will have a very, given the number of activities and impacts with staff that was had compelled leave, stay at home during the pandemic, as well as those that were working during the pandemic and accrued leave, COVID leave, which we have subsequently paid off, so that is no longer an accrued liability, that we believe we'll be able to fully recapture that $740,000 that will be available through the CARES Act. And I think it's a pretty good chance. I said I qualified it, but I know that Ms. Bemis does a great job in providing conservative estimates and not over-promising and under-delivering, that will become pretty close to breaking even for the current fiscal year, with the CARES Act funding being the compensating of it. So that leads us to what about next year. And I would say even in the state's budget, there were lots of qualifiers that were put together. The governor had made several recommended cuts that the legislature was not supportive of. And by everybody's admission, both the state legislature and the governor, the budget that has been adopted is not the one that will serve as its budget for the remainder of this fiscal year. There will be a new state budget that will be performed in August. And what they are relying upon will be just a better confidence in what sales tax receipts are. Because really, if anybody tells you what to say, they don't know. Nobody knows what final sales tax receipts are going to be. And so it's been staff's recommendation that we look at what was the net effect of the impacts of the stay-at-home orders and the shelter in place. And as we get to October 1, what is the best estimates that we can have going forward? The other dynamic to be watching right now, and it began this past Sunday, which is given the rise in positive cases, is a return in some manner and form to going backwards, so to speak. And you saw bars was the first element that was returned back to closed immediately. There are other business segments that track and trace and other counties are dictating and may may come to the forefront for additional closure. A case in point, maybe in-restaurant dining may be the next thing that you may see because of, and if you're following the face covering orders and those sorts of things, it is inside places where face coverings are not prevalent, which is going to be your restaurants and bars. And so I think it's something to watch as going forward. And as the Tulare County Economic Development economists said to you, to those that participated, hopes that there will not be shelter-in-place orders come October, November, because those could have disastrous economic consequences. Case in point is that almost every city makes half of its sales tax, or at least our experience is that in the October, November, December, in the run-up to the holidays. So I think it's things that we need to watch, and as again said, be flexible and be able to pivot. And at the staff recommendation that you consider adopting as an interim budget, the budget that was in place through June 30th, and to use the best information that's available come October 1, actually at your meeting on October 6th, and to formally adopt what would be your budget for the remainder of the 2020-21. Given the conservative fiscal management of the city in the past, you come with, I would say, in your you have established policies that have prepared you for this. You have a reserve, budget stabilization, for the explicit purpose of using reserves if you need to compensate for budget losses. And that right now stands over $4 million. You have other reserve funds. You have a catastrophic emergency fund that has over $3 million in it right now, or close to $3 million. You have other reserve funds as well, and including equipment replacement that all cash on hand as you come into these very uncertain times, at least $15 million. What is also in your interim budget, there are projects that are dedicated to this, but you are having a very good year in Measure I. As we entered this fiscal year, you had a carryover of $1.7 million from the prior fiscal year from 1920. Into 1819, then go into 1920. We are looking at carryover approximately, starting tomorrow is what I would say. The estimate is close to $6.5 million. Now you have street projects that are under design, and you'll have one very soon come to the council for authorization to bid, which is the reconstruction of Newcomb. But I just want to reinforce, you're going to see a number of cities go to the ballot in November seeking sales tax measures to be able to backfill their general fund as general purpose. And the city is already ahead of that game, and I would say is prepared for what the very uncertain times is ahead. But I think it's going to have to be a consistent conversation. I think it's going to require a lot of ingenuity and rethinking of how things are done, and being, like I said, being flexible and being able to pivot as you see circumstances arise. So the recommendation from staff is that that you adopt an interim budget based upon the current budget that expires today, based on the 1920 fiscal year budget, and that you schedule your capital projects meeting for August 25th. I think that is going to be a very important date, because there are legacy projects that I would say are within arm's reach. You have a library project that will be, I would say, a hallmark of what is to come in the next couple of years as we find a way to where and what that ultimate facility is, and the legacy that it will leave for 50 to 100 years in this community. We are moving closer in working with the tribe in the development of the casino project and tertiary treatment in this community as we balance the needs of Sigma and development and the different strings that are being pulled to advance in that regard. And then you're going to see at your meeting next Tuesday, Mr. Ted Smalling come to talk about Measure R amendment that's going to be putting significant resources into work on State Route 190 and the development of a new bridge at Newcomb and other supporting road infrastructure in the airport area to facilitate economic development and better meet the needs of and housing development, I would say, within the Porterville community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have and would ask that the council conduct its public hearing, receive comment, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. No questions? It is 6:39. We will open up the public hearing. Are there any comments?
Brock Neely, address on record. I'd just like to say that looking back to prior to 2004, I lived in a city that probably right now is pretty close to bankruptcy, Tulare. And I am thankful that I live in this city that has the conservative views financially, that we can actually ride this wave and get through it. So I'd like to thank Mr. Lawless, Maria, all the department heads, everybody. They've done a fantastic job to keep us afloat. Thank you.
Thank you. It is appreciated on behalf of several of us. Do we have any comments that have come in electronically?
No, Your Honor.
We have not. We do not have any comments. Okay, it is 6:40. We will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council.
Your Honor,
Yes, please, Councilmember Stowe.
I'd like to make a motion, we adopt the interim budget for the sake of discussion.
We have a motion.
I'll second it for sake of discussion.
Thank you. We have a second. We have a motion made by Councilmember Stowe and a second by Councilmember Garola, and open for discussion.
Mr. Lawless, on the sales tax that are online, when you order items online, those do not come back to the city, is that correct?
No, they do.
They do?
Yeah,
Okay,
there was something, and actually this has
I couldn't
been a
remember.
unique please don't feel any, it's called the Wayfair decision.
The what?
Wayfair was sued by the state of North Dakota or South Dakota. It's one of the Dakotas, was sued because their residents were buying from Wayfair, which is a home furnishings website, and they were not collecting the sales tax. So they sued, and they were successful in the U.S. Supreme Court, is known as the Wayfair decision, which California this year implemented, which I would say thankfully happened, that as much shopping has moved online, that those sales tax are able to be collected. Now, it's at a certain amount by the vendor. I think it's up to 50,000 if they have 50,000 in sales, and there's a de minimis threshold is what I would say. So not every vendor there's a minimum threshold, which the state of California enforces, but we are able to collect those online sales as a result of the Wayfair decision.
Well, if our neighborhood resembles any other, we have carriers stopping all the time around the neighborhood. So that was I was curious. I knew there was something, but I couldn't remember, so.
Okay.
If I can, in just a moment, there's a tool, and we appreciate the council's support for economic development opportunities. You've supported Buxton, which they have a new tool that we're able to use to look at almost on a, I'm going to say daily basis, what is trend against prior year. So we are monitoring this very closely to what what prior year on a daily basis was by segment. So grocery stores, auto dealers, restaurants. Now, it doesn't narrow to the particular company, correct? Right. It's only markets. It's just the segment, but it's really provides some really interesting data, and we are watching it in comparison to our sister cities here, Visalia and Tulare, as well as the state, where we're able to look at what our local experience is by market segment, like I said, grocery stores, auto dealers, restaurants. We have a number of them. We're watching very closely to see what our, and Buxton is providing us this tool to be able to see what that activity looks like in comparison to prior year, as well as, and what's really unique about it is that we see it not only to our own experience compared to 2019 on the calendar day, but as well as you're able to look at it, how your numbers are reflective amongst your, is this a Porterville experience, or is this a Tulare County experience? Is this a state experience? And there's a lot that we're learning through this new tool that Buxton's provided to us. So I wanted to thank the council for their continued support for again, economic development. And even in these times, there is still economic development activities happening. You had Harbor Freight that opened in the middle of all of this. I mean, that to me is a remarkable who invested, am I allowed to say how much they invested in that building? Okay, they invested $500,000 in improvements to that building in terms of moving into that. I just want to make sure I don't violate any. And then you have other development activity that's proposed in Riverwalk, as well as already come before you has been other hotels and other retail opportunities. Is there going to be impacts to that? I think there will. It may delay some of that, but there are others that are showing great enthusiasm to move forward. So sorry to take on a long, but you caused me to remember that I wanted to thank the council for its continued support of Buxton, which we've had great success with in working with the development community and attracting other retail opportunities. And we will continue to do so. And even now, we find it fascinating to be watching on a daily basis what retail activity looks like in our community based on last year, as well as other communities. And it's really interesting because some days, some communities have spikes, and we sit there and we kind of scratch our head is why did Tulare have a spike in their auto dealers on this date? Did they, there's just little things that kind of stick out to you. Did their auto dealers all work together on doing something on that date or something? But it's been a great tool, and I wanted to say thank you for the council's support for that.
Councilmember Guerrero, did you have?
While you're discussing economic development, the EDC, the Tulare County Economic Development Corporation, is part of this budget, am I correct?
It was contained in this current year's budget,
Yeah.
So it would be, yes.
Yeah. So when we approve this budget, if we approve this budget, will it also contain then the chamber EDC? I believe it does have it in. I mean, it's in there, I know, but,
So
or do we pull those out?
Actually, you ask a really good question, because I'd like to show, it's funny what happens in a year that you forget. I'm the first to admit that, so I've asked Jenny to call up your community promotions budget and what's contained within that. So really the question I'd say is, this is what, that budget totals $265,000 that has some personnel costs associated, professional services, and there. So this gives you an overview of what that whole budget looks like. If you advance a slide, Jenny. Yeah. So professional services has the Chamber of Commerce contained within it. At that time, we were talking about the council video recording, which we the monies are still in there, but the council will recall that we use those monies to make improvements. In fact, we're streaming this meeting right now based on some of those funds that were there, plus other improvements to this chamber. And then where you're in large part, in the next point is going to come to your, what are called dues and publications. So that is where you see Tulare County Economic Development Corporation. Actually, they have reduced their dues. They have a new formula. The counties joined the EDC, and there's a new formula for public agencies that's been developed that now has actually the dues that will be submitted to the city would be $25,000, so about $2,600 less than what this year's were. And again, you can see kind of in comparison what the other agencies we collaborate with, which is the Tulare County Association of Governments, Local Area Formation Commission, which did not, so none of these have raised their dues. California League of Cities, I've not received any information on as of yet. And then the Sequoia Tourism Council, which is a partnership for tourism in Tulare County. So this is where it is contained. What I would say is that I know of one other city that is approaching this way, and that is that when the invoice is sent for the annual dues, that it is going to be considered by that council.
Oh, okay. So those invoices are sent when? Sorry.
Oh,
I have a question also, and within this, in previous years in this section, as I had a relationship with the Chamber of Commerce that was set aside, had it been set aside and they made a separate decision, because as I see the Sequoia Tourism Council, I also participated in that as well. So I just wanted to say that out loud, just so that the dynamics of how we go about this are
okay.
stated, so that I can exit if need be.
actually, that's probably a really good disclosure. I'm going to defer to the city attorney on that. If there's an action taken that it would only be if the chamber is any particular action, Julia? But if it's taken as the
Sorry.
whole, as if it's taken as the whole of the budget?
What's Councilmember Reyes's tie exactly?
Well, it's the question of the chamber and Sequoia Tourism Council, which are related.
Oh, so as part of the overall budget, it's okay for him for the budget, if we start having a protracted discussion about an individual item involving the Sequoia Tourism Council and funding, then it becomes an issue.
I just wanted to make sure you and I were on the same page on that. And we are. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Which has not been removed at this point.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I didn't want to create a conflict when they're unknowingly. So,
Caught me off guard there. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
yeah, but I know one jurisdiction that will be considering its continued participation in the EDC based upon when its invoice is submitted, which I would anticipate in the month of July. That's my anticipation, which that can certainly be brought similarly to the council's consideration.
Will the chambers be the same? Will they send us an invoice?
The chamber is under a service agreement.
Oh, that's right.
Specifically, so it operates a little bit differently in that regard. So there's an actual contract between the chamber and the city for services.
So it would be excuse me, I'm sorry. So it would be the contract services and the agreement that would, if we give a direction, or if that's something that would be done to modify anything, would that be done separately?
In regards to the chamber?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question. I'm sorry, did you have other questions? I'm sorry.
No, it was basically what, that I personally would like to see when we get the invoice, to have that discussion from the EDC. And then the chamber, can we pull that out as part of the community promotions to be reviewed?
Yeah, and I think
In August, I think
I
it
can
is.
safely say there's been a dialogue between myself, the city attorney, and the chamber chamber board and legal counsel with regards to needing to address, what is the challenge right now is that the pandemic has made it essentially very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do the activities that that agreement speaks to, and how any performance, or in large part the performance, can be accomplished. So I think there needs to be, well, it's two parts. One is, what are the activities given, you know, I find it very similar to Mr. Moore's presentation to you at your last meeting, which is recreation doesn't look like recreation anymore. We're not doing soccer, we're not doing basketball, we're not doing flag football, we're not doing, you know, these things. But, so, the things that are under the chamber agreement, you just can't do. But alternatively, what are other means and methods that the chamber might be able to perform to promote the community that would be agreeable both to the council and to the chamber? And then once those activities are defined, what is the compensation with that?
And I
So-
fully understand that they, because of the pandemic, that they can't follow through with some of those. But just as you mentioned, that we need to look at that agreement and find out if there are things that they could do differently. So, and I am supportive of the chamber, but we just need to identify what those items will be, or those activities will be in the upcoming year.
I'm going to chime in and echo that sentiment. I do believe we need to just look at it, revisit, and
No,
see yes.
Yeah, both, when I say both sides, the chamber.
Chamber agrees with that, from what I understood today.
Okay, and then I will echo the sentiment to bring the invoice for the TRDC, to bring the invoice for approval. That's what you, yeah. I don't have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that, Tulare River? You're okay with that?
To bring the invoice, yes.
To bring the invoice for approval, okay.
Yeah, so-
How about you, Councilmember Stowe?
I'm fine with that.
All right, how about you, Councilmember Peñalosa?
I also in agreement with that. Your
Thank
Mayor.
you very much. All right, because we do have the motion and we have a second. Are there any more
Yes, I do.
items? Please. Please.
First of all, I want to thank all the officers in the department for all their efforts in protecting our community and doing it ethically and honorably. So I really do want to send that message out. But I feel too that, and in any way, I do not want to defund the police department. I don't want to do that. But and I was thinking of this the other day as I was texting Mr. Lawless about something that was going on, that I thought, oh, why does the police handling that? And that's some of the homeless issues. And so I thought, maybe they're at a situation where there's a crime going on, and we're asking them to pull them this way. Also, are there other things that the police department is doing that really aren't criminal activities and may require a team of some type to come in and assist? I heard that Kern has such a team that comes out and deals with those areas that are really not of a criminal activity, that are not a crime. So I wanted to hear from the chief to see, are those kinds of activities on a regular basis, and taking our police department or our police officers away from those activities that are really criminal?
The short answer, Councilwoman, is yes. Like I explained before, the pendulum swings back and forth. While there are calls for defund the police, then those people turn around. Some folks, not here in our community.
No.
Our community has been outstanding, fabulous. Even the protesters that had protests, the vast majority of them were very respectful. We had good conversations with them. They offered our folks pizza and water. So no complaints at all. But, by sheer nature of the business, we're open 24/7, 7 days a week. So when people have a problem, they call us, whether even if it's a non-criminal problem. across the country right now where they want to take some of these monies and divert them. Defund the police is kind of a very antagonistic word, but maybe a reallocation of funds, that sort of thing, which is basically lower police budgets. But again, a lot of these things are put to the wayside when they do have a problem, and then they do need the police, or they think it's a criminal act, and it's not a criminal act. Sometimes we get calls and we don't know they're a criminal act until we get out there. I'd mentioned before that there's a program that we wanted to look at, and I'm certainly not advocating increasing our budget to enact this, but certainly something to look at. There's a program that we were looking at. They implemented it 31 years ago, and they indicate that about 17% of their calls get reverted to this program. 17% of their police calls. Now, we had a program that could guarantee 17% of our police calls would get diverted to this civilian program where it's actually a social worker and EMT, and where they handle it, and only 1% of those come back to the police. Then I can certainly see not having as many officers as we have, by a couple. Because 17% of those calls, if we're not going to them. But we certainly don't want to get in a position, we were, until our community was so gracious giving us Measure H and Measure I, without those two, we certainly wouldn't have enough to even handle the calls that we have. Even with all the officers we have on duty right now, we do have moments where we're completely swamped and we don't have time for any proactivity or community engagement and that sort of thing. Diverting some of these calls would allow us to do more of that, to strengthen our position. We're already very strong. But spend some time doing that. But it's something to have to look at. We certainly wouldn't want to make a decision, just because other people are doing it, or as a knee-jerk reaction. But I think there's value in looking at it. I think there's value, if our officers did not have to go to homeless calls, if our officers did not have to go to calls where somebody's just having a mental health type issue. We're still getting calls and responding to parents who have trouble getting their kids to school.
Exactly, I've heard that, and I'm like.
We consider ourselves full service, and if we have somebody available, if somebody calls us, criminal or not, we're gonna go. But I think there's value in looking at other programs and not instead of police, but as part of the whole community response that the city does. Code enforcement has taken a load off our CSOs. Our community service officers used to do a lot of things that code enforcement does. With the addition of code enforcement officers, now our CSOs get to concentrate on a lot more things, enhance our animal control, able to move one over to animal control, enhance that program. So by adding more, finding a way to add more, I wouldn't say to replace us, but to work collaborating with our department, or as part of our department.
And I want to be very clear, there is no way that I want to defund or to appropriate money away from the police department, nor to lose officers. But if you can look at something like that, and that is the one that reminded me as well, is to go to a home to tell kids to get dressed or something. Our officers should not be doing that. I mean, that's just, I shouldn't be saying, oh, go take care of this homeless person that has their basket out in the road. If we can have somebody else that's part of a different team to do that, I think that is, as you said, valuable to the organization of the police department. So I just wanted to bring that up, and so you'll come back with something later at some other time?
We are. We are just starting to look at programs, and you're starting to see a few agencies that are popping up here and there. We're evaluating where we might want to go look at where they have a program. Particularly the one that I talked about before. It's actually separate from the police department, but the calls come through the police department. We're trying to find a couple that are part of the police department, see how that is, see how that works. We never stop looking for ways to improve, so we're going to try to identify some of these programs, but go talk to them. Go talk to both the police administration, the persons that are part of this program, maybe part of the city administration, and see what works for them, and see if
Well, again, you know, the police department under your leadership does a terrific job. You have a outstanding team, you know, all the officers that are there. I am just, you know, grateful that we live in this community with this police department.
I'm looking at Mr. Lawless because when you were having the conversation,
She and I probably had the same thought.
I was, because the
prefer the mayor.
wellness center, the navigation center, it would be a different, I mean, with the, we were anticipating the opening a while back, and we're looking to see now that it's coming, and I believed it was supposed to be tomorrow.
Yeah,
But again, it's going to happen, and in the services that are going to be provided, that would take the aspect of the mental health services and then a lot of the one-stop there, which could help hopefully align with some of the community services to this regard. So please go ahead, Mr. Lawless.
Well,
because-
so the mayor called the meeting, the chief and I both were, because they're in Visalia. There's a pilot, as they call it, where county mental health is going out with what's called in Visalia their HOPE team and the HOPE team is really there just to provide a sense of security while and the mayor can attest, county mental health does not want to go out without
An officer or somebody.
officer.
Somebody, yeah.
They don't. So the folks in this county that are charged in providing those services right now are at the wellness center that is on Henderson Avenue. To be able to bring those services out to those that need it, the pilot that they are using right now is in partnership with the HOPE team, which is police officers in Visalia. I think there's a holistic way to look at this, and I'm looking at what is in other counties where there has been and just kind of watching the conversation about defund the police has been, well, we need to focus those efforts in mental health. Some counties do not have Bradley Burn shares like Tulare County does. So in Tulare County, and it's one of the few counties that have a tax sharing agreement between its cities and the county, which in Porterville's experience, as an example, we provide 5% of our sales tax to the county to provide services, which constitutes about $300,000 a year that the city shares with the county for the provision of county services. There are counties that don't have those kinds of agreements, where they are now coming to them and saying, and that's become part of the defund the police conversation, which is we would like to provide these services to you if you will share with us your sales tax, whatever you're defunding, will you share it with us as the county who provides mental health services? When I say this, that has also been some of the conversation that our county has also talked about. And the example is, what is the city going to put up as a match if we're going to be providing the services in mental health? I don't think I misunderstood from my colleague at the county that, we can start a team, but how do we access county mental health? We're going to have an agreement for that, we're going to have an agreement for that. And it's probably going to be an additional investment on the city's part. So when I talk about, there's a number of conversations that are going on in regards to whether it's mental health, whether it's drug abuse or addiction issues. There's a number of these, and that's what Chief Crodel was referring to, is that there are these folks that are trained. I'll tell you, you can create a team. You're going to have an agreement with the county to be able for your team to engage the county professionals. That's already been pretty clear as an example that the county folks aren't going out to work with those that are experiencing homelessness unless you're providing resources to them to ensure their safety. So I think there's a bigger conversation in this. The other component, and I would say, and maybe I'm biased, but I think that Porterville has done more to try to invest in its disadvantaged communities. Show me another city that's put $100 million into serving its disadvantaged communities in the last, 10 years. I don't think you're going to, the city stepped up in partnering with the state of California to provide a $50 million water system to East Porterville, and continues right now to continue to try to serve. We did $15 million in sewer extension projects to areas. The council recently, just this last year, authorized another $15 million to go and extend sewer. Every time those sewer connections made, that house gets a $10,000. The return on investment to the connection of that, and beyond that, now we're using Measure I to leverage that into doing curb gutter, sidewalk, streetlights in areas that we're not. So I would say there's been a lot of steps that the city has taken. I would say more than any other city in Tulare County. I can't speak outside of Tulare County, but in terms of making its investment, the core question comes: why would you annex anything? Why would you annex anything? The reason you've done it is to be able to provide a better quality of life. Now, does it happen overnight? No, it doesn't. But it requires a plan, and it's one that we have steadily been trying to execute. So, you're absolutely right. I think that it needs to have a holistic conversation to it, because we can develop a program that you're going to have another agreement with the County of Tulare on how those services that they provide, you're going to interface with them.
And if I can add, we've been, the city managers have been talking about this for a while. We've gone to meetings with HHSA where they were thinking about bringing, the whole program here and letting us try it in South County. It just never come to fruition. But I think you have to recognize the irony of it is, a lot of the social work, homeless in itself is not criminal activity. I do believe, based on, how they live, how they choose to live, or, through being mental health or something like that, I think sometimes they get a bad rap. Our homeless are not responsible for all the crime that's happening in Portland. But people see that. So we have some groups telling us that, they're not criminals, and we agree, they're not all criminals. They're not creating a lot of the criminal issues that we're having. We need to treat them as, like we do. However, if you want us to go deal with them, we need you there. So it's kind of an oxymoron. It's like you tell us that, hey, be careful how you treat them, they're not criminals and that sort of thing, which we agree with. But if we have to go out to talk to them, we need an officer to be with us. So it kind of flies in the face of what we're trying to say. But there is I don't know where, but there is something out there that will fit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I do appreciate the chief. He's always, as an example, we started a juvenile delinquency program, non-sworn, working with Steve Walker to prevent kids from, and we were not seeing, the customary referral was to Thunderbolt, which we were not, it was just becoming a paper shuffle. There wasn't an actual program for the kids to be referred to. It was, well, you've been referred to Thunderbolt, and then there was a piece of paper, and congratulations, you know. And we said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so we started that program now, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe. And we've expanded it. We have 2 juvenile delinquency officers now, and actually got a call from the superintendent last week, appreciative of the work that they do to prevent youth from getting in the system. That, that the city has such a program that is just not shuffling paper with them, but are actually working with them And I would say they have success. They have some that are not success. I think that's part of this whole overall holistic, which is looking at, as the chief described, there are programs out there that are having success. And if it's 17%, I mean, how many calls did you have in 2019? Sorry to spring that on you.
Calls for service,
Calls for
little, I think we're gonna see over 40, close to 45,000 this year.
All right, so you're talking about 5,000 calls. I mean, it's worth, if that, they call that addition by subtraction, that you have other, and perhaps, I use the juvenile delinquency program with non-sworn personnel, working with them one-on-one or in a small group, that it's not just responsive, it's not response, it's being proactive with them and providing additional resources.
Thank you. Council Vice Mayor, did you have any?
I just wanted to say also, I think, the department does a great job, and one of the things that I think about when I think about the growth that we were experiencing here, and I don't, although, the environment around is a certain way, I don't think that reducing the amount of officers is really the way the direction we should go is increasing the other options that are out there. Is the officers, they're being flagged down on the way to calls they're already supposed to go to. They get called for road obstructions that they will drive out and move something out of the way, or animal control will come do it. But all those little things can eat into that 17% and leave them to do the things that are happening. And they're already prioritizing all the calls. There's pending calls in priority. So there's already a system built in to feed that to people who can take care of those problems. So I think, we're in good shape as far as what the logistics behind what we're doing and the energy behind it, I think is the most positive it could be. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. And listening, I probably came across wrong. I certainly wasn't advocating reducing our officers. What I was talking about is instead of having the need to increase officers, we can increase on this civilian side or this side. I know I'm the one that used the term, give up a couple officers. I meant a couple officers that are coming.
Okay.
And right now, you reminded me, when we met with the people from the HOPE team, they used the word civilian. Somebody that could go out with one of their caseworkers, and they did use that it didn't have to be, but it's somebody that worked in the,
I just thought it was kind of they'd like an officer, just not in uniform,
yeah, something to that effect.
which I understand.
uniform?
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that, but let's just be candid. There was a concern for safety, and if a bad situation arose while they were there to do that, that they wanted, that the officer may be in khakis and a polo shirt, but they're also going to be carrying, be carrying a firearm for the worst of circumstances, and that's what was being.
Some of the, when they put on the annual homeless event, there have been times they've asked, for officers to be there. Again, not that they're criminals, but we want the officers there. But then they said, but we don't want them to know you're officers.
Okay,
So
understood.
They don't want them to not come because they see an officer.
Right.
It's a difficult, because the uniform to some are an obstacle to services. But at the same time, it's a deterrent. But at the same time, you have those that are providing the service that want to ensure that they are safe. And that's why I say there's a nuance, or there's a broader, kind of this holistic is what I call it, I think there's a way forward in that. It was frustrating to the mayor and I and the chief that when we called this meeting now a year ago at least, that said, hey, we'd like to try to work with county mental health and doing outreach. Well, we're still only doing this right now as a pilot in Visalia. You need to wait. And I think to bring the county to the table is going to take an agreement, and with that, I do believe is going to have to be an financial incentive. So,
Doesn't the county get money for mental health and homelessness? Well, I know they
Right.
get homelessness.
right, but we're talking about method of delivery. So we're talking about, like I said, I think this is a
There's more
bigger,
discussion,
this is
yeah.
a bigger conversation about how
Conversation.
services are delivered and what are the best means to be able to do it. And how can, if we know what the problem is, and we know what isn't working, then how do you figure out a solution that meets both interests? I think that's, and I would say that there's some engagement in that regard, but it needs to be, you're absolutely right. There are other programs that are having success out there because they're doing these things. I'd be curious in the program that the chief's referring to what extent is the county, who's responsible for providing the mental health services, and what does that agreement look like? Because I heard pretty clear from my counterpart that if the city were to start its own program, we're going to have an agreement with them on how our mental health program or social workers engage their folks.
We'll continue to have those discussions.
Yeah, I think that,
We'll
but it's an
continue
important
those
one.
discussions.
I think this is an important one because I think we're at a touchstone point in this conversation, especially as the mayor talked about. We are going to have a navigation center open. The county did make it very clear that they were going to be an on-site, everyday part of that program. So these are some very real deliverables that we can collaborate towards.
I just didn't want to get through the budget without at least touching on that.
Well,
So that we knew that, and you come up with the money, so.
Yeah, well, we will. I mean, that'll be the question. I mean, I would say the money isn't as much the issue as what's the answer, then what does that answer, how do you get to that answer? What you're seeing in some other counties is that the county wants to provide the service, but they want the cities to pay for it through their sales tax, setting up their own Bradley Burns sharing agreements, similar to what we have. And where that money comes from then is through the Defund the Police initiative. So this is what I'm saying. I can't tell you can, by October 1, this is a question but I think it is one that we can, and I don't know how the council wished to, it's gonna take engagement. I think Jason Britt is the right person. He comes as former director of HHSA. He comes as a person who came through that side of the county. So I think he's a great person and to have that conversation with and how we might be able to fashion something that, and they've started something already in Visalia with, and it's just, what is it? Once a week, maybe? I'm trying to, it's not every day where they go out. I mean, it's not a every day, I think it's a very limited.
The social worker doesn't go every day. Their home team is.
Right, their HOPE team is an everyday, but the social worker does not go out with them every day. I think there are ways to talk about that, and I can start that with my counterpart, because this is going to be in the end, this is going to be an agreement, I would say, or we're going to have some understanding between yourselves and the Board of Supervisors and how your resources are combined together as a solution.
And it's a little bit different type of program. The whole team, they come on duty and they handle complaints that have come through. They go contact the homeless and deal with that based on complaints. Some of the other programs we're talking about is like a 24/7 call. If somebody calls in and they have a mental health issue or they call out, that team is there to go. The whole team's a little bit different in that sense. They're not like a 24/7 handling the calls for service related to that area, you know, on at night or weekends or whatever they're scheduled.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Stowe, did you have any questions or discussion or anything you'd like to comment before we bring it back? Thank you. Councilmember Peñalosa.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would say, yeah, I appreciate Councilwoman Gorilla's comments. I do want to have a deeper conversation around, how we can better utilize the resources, partnerships to enhance services to the community and reevaluate what type of response, PD may have to certain scenarios, and if we can find the best way to engage those members of the community, depending on the calls that or the what's going on with the people, and so look forward to that conversation. I do want to, on those lines, I do want to. I'm not too sure. I guess this is a question that I have. At what point could we? I know that during our August meeting would that be the best time to have a conversation about proposal that I have to I really want to see if we can have a sort of youth leadership program led by the city, very close to Leadership Portable. I know Leadership Portable really opened my eyes, and I would like to see a similar program with the youth, and maybe the Youth Commission participate with that. But I don't know when's the best time to propose that, to see if we can look into what that looks like and see if that's something that we as council would look to invest for the incoming year. But thinking about investments into the community and youth engagements, I think I really want to see when's the appropriate time to be able to share that.
Anytime, I would say anytime is certainly as part of the budget, we could have a conversation about that. There has been a similar experience to that. There was a summer program that was done, it's been several years ago now, and it was I would call it Leadership Porterville Light. It was over, I think, a 2-week period of time is what I'm trying to recall, where high school youth applied, and I want to say it was probably about 20 kids that went through it. Do you recall?
Porterville, it was a Porterville Youth Leadership Academy, and it was the president and vice president of ASB, I believe that was, yeah, and then they kind of went through the abbreviated Leadership Porterville style program. But it was the incoming, so they would be the incoming senior, so that they would have a chance to utilize what they had learned rather than graduate and then go somewhere else and utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, those are, from if that is something that the city would like to put on as part of our, maybe that would be a neat program for the Youth Commission to take on as a project, would be to run an academy like that, and allowing some number of folks. I know that your department heads and other members of this community always appreciate the opportunity to engage youth. You already have almost most of your department heads involved in different pathway opportunities, advising youth already. They are the practitioners. We've been a steady supporter of internships, allowing real work experience. So I don't think it's I don't think that's more a budgetary issue, I guess, because my experience with that is that that's not a dollars and cents issue. That's a program issue, which, if you will, through this, if it's a budgetary process, but we can certainly look to plan to put something together.
Well, and also just to comment that, that several times since I hadn't really been heavily involved with the Step Up Committee, but I've always thought that there should be a more locally, just a general in-town version of that, where the Youth Commission is able to give input, where citizens are able to give input directly to the people who are here rather than spread it throughout as much or have as many partners that, having just the local PD partnering, I think, is important to give that community connection. But just something that is a little more, and I don't want to say like a commission, a citizens commission on it, but something that does give you a way to collect input, put forth programs, see mutual benefit, and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Mr. Lawless, are we having a meeting to discuss projects from the council.
Yeah, and I think that was a council member's question, which is August 25th, which we
August
can,
25th.
we can talk about that.
Oh, that's right.
All right.
And I think, yeah, the bottom, if we can, discuss that on the 25th, I would really much appreciate it. Really want to see how we can engage the young people. And I was able to participate, and this is coming from obviously the fact that me as a young person participating in politics and local government, and just giving the young people of this community an ability to understand how local government works and how they can, work in partnership with nonprofits, with businesses, with community leaders to bring about changes that they want to see. And so I think that's where this idea it comes from. It's with that motive. If it's a city-led program that connects the youth commission, that connects our departments a little bit more closer with the young people, then we're creating those bridges with the young people of this community at a very early on age, so they understand the dynamics of getting some changes that are positive for them, that reflect their needs as well in this conversation. And so, yeah, thank you. The other thing is, I know with COVID-19, elections are going to be impacted greatly. So, your regular door-to-door canvassing is not going to be happening most likely. My question is, I know there are cities, and I saw this through the National League of Cities. They have this, I guess, kind of commitment from cities, and including the commitments from mayors that are elected at large, to find programs and ways that the cities can actually engage voters during COVID-19, and investing some monies, appropriate funds during this election cycle to ensure that people are not discouraged from not voting, but can still have the same kind of ability. Of course, it's going to be different, but I want to see if there's a possibility for us to have a discussion as council to see if we're willing to during this election cycle find ways that the city can actually invest some monies, whether it's through messaging, encouraging, text messaging, sending a flyer with the water bill. Just to continue to encourage people to just vote and turn in their mail ballots as opposed to maybe going to a polling location. But I want to see if that could be a conversation that we can have to see what that kind of looks like for us.
I'm going to look to the city attorney on that. You're going to have an item on your agenda on Tuesday to talk about potential ballot initiatives, including TOT, and we need to be, I know she'll tell you we need to be careful when we advocate for certain things while we potentially would have things on the ballot.
Yeah, we'll look at it. I mean, generally speaking, you can advocate to just get out the vote generally when you're not, as long as you're not advocating any specific positions. But we'll have, we just need to be cognizant of the fact that we do have potentially a couple ballot measures that'll be moving forward.
Yeah, it's helpful.
That we keep those activities very separate from each other.
Yeah, and so I think there's a way absolutely through messaging and that sort of thing. I know that it's something our clerk's office does frequently as well about voter registration and those sorts of things as part. Is that a fair comment, Patrice? But it certainly could be more robust. I'm not predetermining an outcome. I just know that it's going to be another level of, and we can discuss it further next Tuesday as we're talking about potential, and as we get closer to the election, about just making sure we're keeping on the right side of legal.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring it back. We already had a motion on the floor, and we have had a second, and we've had quite a bit of good discussion. So with that being said,
Can we thank Maria for all the work
oh, of
she's done?
course.
In getting this budget together. She does an outstanding job and should be recognized for that.
She's shaking her head no.
Well, I was going to see if
I
she
think she
wanted.
really wants you to approve it.
She's probably shaking her head because I had her in mind as being a great facilitator of this youth leadership program.
Yes. Can you see that smile under the
Hey,
mask?
She's a graduate of Leadership Porterville and a former board member, so I can't think of a better facilitator. Oh, yeah, okay, never mind.
Thank you, Maria. This is, I just want to say thank you for all your good efforts and always keeping us on a tight budget. But, you know, when times like this really remind us that, you know, that it's good to be conservative fiscally, and because, you know, you never know when emergencies happen like COVID-19. So thank you, and thank you, John, directors as well. I know that I'm so grateful to have to be a second year on council and to have John Lawless as a city manager. I think we're very privileged and blessed to have you. And I'll say it and I won't stop saying it because you've really developed a team that is amazing, every one of them. And they're all growing as leaders every day, I bet, under your leadership. So just want to mention those comments out.
All right, thank you very much. Would you please call for a vote? There be no further discussion.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Yes.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye. Passes unanimous 5-0, and the meeting is adjourned. It's 7:34.